You know, we're at interesting times here in the 21st century, early part of the 21st century. Everything about what's around us, in us, with us, in our society, has reached a point of crossroads. We have got to reevaluate economically, religion, foreign policy, domestic policy, sex. What is sex? In a digital world, in an internet world. What is all this thing of the internet? The ramifications of having real-time, nearly instantaneous communication with people around the globe. Well, here in the U.S., one big thing that's coming up is the clarification. A lot of things are saying, clarify it, acknowledge it, quit hiding behind the myth, quit hiding behind the lies, bring it out, acknowledge it, and then repudiate it. Don't carry it on any farther. Let it go. Now, one is this whole thing in America about the Confederacy. The Confederacy had no validity to exist. There is no defense for slavery. There's a bunch of statues still around throughout the South, in particular, southern states, and they're of Confederate generals, but other things about the Confederacy. And it's time to take all those statues down and destroy them. There is no validity to the Confederacy. They deserve to be destroyed. There is no defense for slavery. We're over 150 years later, we finally have to say quite clearly and directly, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of clarity, of wisdom, of knowledge, of being able to move on in the 21st century, you got to say it clearly. There's no defense for slavery. There's no validity to slavery. Humanity requires it. So we quite, directly say, we put it in our history books finally, that the Confederacy was an horrific, vile ignorance of slavery brutality and needed to be destroyed. It was justified. Period. Now, just in history, look around. The same has happened in Germany. There are no statues of Nazi generals out around Germany. Of course not. The Nazis were horrific, vile insanity, and it needed to be destroyed. And they don't fly the Nazi flag or allow it to be flown anywhere in Germany either. Now, that's quite correct, because we look at what Nazi is. What is it? Not just what it was, but what is even today. There's still some idiots who are still trying to say they're Nazis. Well, they're actually saying they're vile, ignorant, violent people of segregation, racism, repression, That's what Nazi is. So it's quite okay. And Germany is quite correct and says no statues, commemoration of anything Nazi. That was horrific. A stain on humanity. And you're not going to have the flag anywhere in public buildings and schools and whatnot. In the same way, Nazi is equal to the Confederacy. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it was. Slavery. Germany was filled with, in Nazi era, had slave labor camps all over. They had these extermination camps. Horrific stuff. The Confederacy, that's all they had. Slave labor camps everywhere. Slavery. Vile. So it's quite correct. Take down all the Confederate statues, destroy them. Take down all the Confederate flags. They shouldn't be anything in a, state government buildings or anything, like churches or public schools or anything. Take them down. They are the symbol of that vile system of slavery. And we can clearly state the Confederacy had no validity to exist. It needed to be destroyed. No defense for slavery. And that's what we do in the 21st century here. We acknowledge the past, the things that have happened. We state them clearly, get to the facts of the thing. We acknowledge that. And then if they're vile and ridiculous like the Confederacy, like Nazis, you repudiate them. So that as a precedent, as a statement, you're saying, that is not tolerated. And it clarifies the whole structure thing here in the 21st century. You do the same thing with religion. You do the same thing with all aspects of, your government history, of foreign policy. You see what you did, clarify it, repudiate what's bad, ignorant stuff, the mistakes. Like Vietnam was a terrific mistake, was wrong for America. And you repudiate it, say, I'm not going to do that again. And then you move into this digital age without all this baggage of maybes and, well, it could have been, or they're still limping along with some. No, it's time to clarify. And then you can move ahead. Understood. What we are? What are we? What do we really want? What is our real motivation? We've acknowledged these horrific things of the past, and we say, yeah, it happened. We ain't going to do it again. We put it in our history books. We teach it to our kids. The Confederacy had no validity to exist. There is no defense for slavery. Now, you've heard this too, like, then think of the families who their people, their great-great-great-grandparent back there was a Confederate soldier and died in some Confederate battle or whatnot, right? In the Civil War. Well, too bad. People make mistakes. But think of it. The Confederate guys, they went out there in the Civil War, and they fought and died to try and keep people in slavery. Now that's a pretty ignoble death. That's bad. That is kind of, that's ignorance. You're going out to fight and die to keep the system of slavery going? Well, that's pretty ignorant. In 21st century intelligent awareness, wisdom, we can say that. Because it's true. The families, well, that's just what happened. You got to move on too. You don't keep carrying on somehow, some way. We've got to honor the dead. You don't honor a Nazi. You don't honor the Confederacy of slavery, brutality, torture, rape, murder that was the system of slavery. No. Those soldiers went out and died to try and keep the system of slavery in place? Well, that was a mistake. Time to let it go. That was then, this is now. And we can say what the truth of that situation is. The Confederacy had no validity to exist. There is no defense for slavery. It was perfectly correct to destroy the system of the Confederacy. And let's keep going into the light of the 21st century. We've cut off the Dark Age stuff. Come into the light.